Welcome to 122 and an eighth. This is the Cowabunga Chronicles. I'm your resident sewer rat, Chris, joined by
Nolan.
Whoa. And we are here to explore the sewers of the TMNT IDW collection. This is Volume 5, April O'Neil. Nolan, how you been?
I'm all right. How are you?
All right. Pretty good. Totally awesome. Yeah. It's been a while since we recorded a little bit.
It's been like 3 weeks.
Audience doesn't really know that, through the magic of like release schedules and stuff like that. We put some planning into this. But yeah, it's been a while since we've talked turtles. And on a personal note, this is a whole turtle week for me. I'm headed out to the Portsmouth Mini-Con to meet Kevin Eastman and maybe, fingers crossed, Peter Laird in person. And Ben Bishop and Tom Waltz and Steve Levine is going to be there. It's going to be quite a crazy weekend. And I'm excited to share this podcast and this project with them as well. And hey, who knows? Maybe we can get a creator on. I think that would be a fun bonus episode or something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be a cool time. We have a lot to talk about in Volume 5 here. And as we were just firing up all of our, fancy podcast equipment here, we were talking about how we weren't the biggest of fans of this volume overall. Tell me more about it.
Well, first of all, I think this volume should have been Donatello on the cover because it was a Donatello volume.
It had to be.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting you say that because as I was reading this, I was like, why is April is this going to unfold into April a little bit more? I'm just very confused. But yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Point.
That, and I think next volume has an April and Casey miniseries, so...
Why?
Yeah.
So why?
Yeah,
Which I think that Casey and April series, I have a fair amount of those single issues. Every time I see them, they're going pretty cheaply. It's not like a highly sought after miniseries, so to say. Yeah. So I am curious how that turns out.
Yeah. It might be fine. I feel like value does not always translate.
Sure.
But this volume, just reading it was the first volume I really was kind of actively not enjoying, at least with the miniseries. The main issues were great, especially the last chunk was I felt like there was a lot of payoff for what we had been getting, but
absolutely,
the lead up to it was just rough for me.
But the miniseries taking away from the pacing of the main series, I think, is what we had the most difficult time.
Yeah.
And I think if we even were to listen back to our previous episodes, we talk a bit about this in and out dance from the main series to the miniseries, and we've been able to sort of stomach it a little bit, even if I wasn't a huge fan of The Secret History of the Foot Clan. We were able to get through it, whereas this is I think it's literally 4, 4, 4, 4. And so it takes you in and out of the story so quickly, for better and for worse. I think we were saying that these particular mini-series were the least directly tied compared to the previous ones.
And, the Turtles in Time, the first 4 issues, it felt like structurally very similar to other things, which the Turtles are right by Splinter, then they disappear, and then Splinter's like, where'd they go? They're in trouble or what have you.
Sure.
And then they blip back, and then Splinter makes a funny comment. It felt like the same thing we've seen before.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I just realized as we're talking about this, day of recording is the day before this entire IDW collection comes to a close with issue 150.
Yep.
I've been holding on to my polls and not reading them, planning to get to them, doing all the lead up and everything, but is kind of a landmark week in Turtle history, so to say. The closing of this series at 150 issues. How many books nowadays are up to 150?
I mean, it's not a ton. I deal with all of the book or most of the books anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't see a ton. I mean, Spawn.
I mean, it's rare air, so to say, right?
I feel like most books end up renumbering at some point in
Sure.
there. So it is a very impressive feat, especially because, not to say that the Turtles don't deserve to have that, but it feels like something you wouldn't expect for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to get a 150
Right.
issue run.
And we've talked about it before, how it's just 2 writers, right? Like over that 150 span. So that's impressive in itself. But yeah, I think it's 150 comes out this week. Then we have the alphas and the source books that are kind of out. And then
Alpha comes out in June. I forget to do. And then July is.
And then July, we have Jason Aaron leading the charge with a renumbering. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And again, timing of things and everything like that. You're going to hear this at a different time, but worth mentioning in Turtle history, 150 issues. Pretty awesome. So let's hop into this week's episode. Thanks for bearing with us on the little history rant. But Turtles in Time. We have Rennet being the worst bumbling time traveler ever. We're going to talk about we're going to review each of these, but moreover, we're going to talk about them in kind of the whole arc of all 4 issues here. So the first one, we have the Turtles in prehistoric times with dinosaurs, but the Utroms happen to be there. They capture Raph. They get him back. It's very quick. Because those Utroms are actually scientists and whatnot. The second one here did some interesting things. So what's happening between each of these issues is that Rennet is pulling them in and out of time traveling in space and time, so to say. And it's explained at the end that the scepter was like kind of broken. It was kind of malfunctioning in bringing them to places that they were meant to be in time. And so each one of these issues is a different lesson that the Turtles are learning, each one of them. And so issue 1, I think, is Raph, possibly, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think.
I kind of just got the impression that this whole thing was just to have Donnie learn a lesson more than each individual turtle.
I think he learned the biggest one, but number 2 is definitely Leo, in the sense that they are landed in feudal Japan. They steal a bunch of samurai outfits, and which is very reminiscent of Turtles in Time, the movie number 3, rather.
Yeah.
They see someone getting ganged up and bullied, and so they jump in to help this person rid the bullies, and that person happens to be Hamato Yoshi. So now they're seeing their human form of their father in feudal Japan. He invites them for dinner, so now they're seeing their previous carnations of themselves, and meeting their mother. So there's that really fun moment where Mikey gets to hug his mom, right? And they are sitting there with the reality of knowing that what happens to them. And Leonardo decides to take some matters into his own hands and goes after Shredder.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's ready to sacrifice himself for the better of mankind and everybody. But Raph convinces him that you might want to sacrifice yourself, but by doing this, you're sacrificing everybody, and that's not okay. And so there was that lesson I thought was interesting. But my favorite page of each one of these issues was probably almost the last page of every issue. Shows how even though they thought they were affecting time, the time continuum, it was actually just falling into place. That Shredder saying, the next time somebody crosses me, I'm going to be rid of them. And that person who crosses them the next time happens to be Hamato Yoshi, right?
Yeah.
So it's things like that. They hop from feudal Japan up to issue 3, which I call Swashbuckling Turtles. And this was Michelangelo's lesson. he becomes like some kind of motivational speaker or something like that, gets them all to not run in fear. There's stories of a Kraken and the Devil's Men, I think they're called, or something like that. And it happens to be Krang on Burn now in this time. So they lead an offensive against him. They're then zapped to the to the dystopian future, which you said was one of your favorite issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to recap that a little bit?
Prehistoric is almost the exact opposite of
It is.
the dystopian future.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it.
It was weird that I liked this issue because I really dislike dystopian future stuff. I mean, there's the occasional one I like, but generally speaking...
Last Ronin, though. I mean,
I've not read it.
Oh, okay.
Because
we have another series for that. Yeah.
I just haven't been interested because it's a dystopian future. I've heard great things.
Sure.
But...
maybe we'll chronicle that with some Cowabungas later. Yeah.
But I mean, it was a fairly simple story. There was nothing crazy compared to other dystopian futures, but I don't know. For some reason, it just connected with me in a way that others didn't.
Sure. And so what Nolan's talking about that happens in this issue is they're running away. They end up in the sewer. They're in Manhattan, dystopian future Manhattan. They end up running away to the sewers to kind of hide. They initially think that mutants are okay, and they're out there, and they call it Manhattan, and that kind of outs them, so to say. And Shredder has taken over. They see a map in their old lair, or, well, what they think is their old lair, but it's really the current lair, whatever. And they see that the Foot is taking it all over. Krang has taken over the other half of the globe. And out of the shadows comes old Donnie. And Donnie has admits that he had given up, and all the others had died because they hadn't given up. So it was that confrontation there that was super interesting. They get zapped away. After they get zapped away, there's a really interesting moment where a resistance fighter says, like, we need a leader, and is trying to convince Donnie to get back into the fight. And that resistance leader happens to be Woody, which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
In I think the tightest connection between these, which is loose but still important, is that when they get zapped back, quote unquote, into like the mainline story, they are all talking, and Donnie admits that he has had times where he just wants out. Like, he just wants to be done with all the fighting. He just wants to go away. I thought it was a very interesting dynamic between all four of them, and how all four of them kind of talked about it, and he exposed like his vulnerability and everything like that. And now in saying that and knowing what happens at the end of this volume, it's kind of interesting to have heard him say that.
Yeah, I feel like it was a lot of issue. And even though I did like the last issue, I do feel like it was kind of a lot of issue to lead up to doubts that literally every person has had about everything ever.
Right, for sure.
And I feel like the themes, the lessons that were learned didn't move into the main series at all. Like, I don't even remember a reference to it really.
And I was hoping that there would be.
Yeah.
Frankly, I was like, okay, even if I'm not like stomaching this whole thing, so to say, maybe these things will be referenced or something like that. And I didn't even see like a side comment. Sometimes you get like a side comment and a little reference, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even get that. I would also say that the animation style and the general maturity level of this series was a bit lower than the main series.
Yeah.
I thought it was not Saturday Morning Adventures, series maturity level, but I don't think it was the same. It didn't match the same tones exactly.
Yeah. I also feel like throughout the series, specifically in the Feudal Japan one, I feel like there was so much more they could have done with them seeing their younger selves, and especially in particular meeting their mom.
Yes, you just got that moment of Michelangelo hugging her, right?
Yeah. I feel like there could have been so much more, to the point where I feel like that could have been a 4-issue miniseries instead of having the rest, because that could have still been called Turtles in Time.
Right.
And it would have been like the movie. At that
right,
point,
at some point, yeah.
So I just feel like this whole story just didn't do anything for me and could have been a lot more.
Sure.
And just, it didn't feel like a good follow-up to the end of the Volume 4, which was like the big issue with Shredder and Krang.
Right, yeah.
And then it didn't feel like it connected to anything that came after, so it just felt like why was this here?
Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of the main stories, let's hop into it. We are on issue 38, which feels like a small number in comparison to the number of issues we have read. I keep reminding myself, I'm like, wait, we've read way more than 37 issues.
Yeah.
But issue 38 starts out with Slash sneaking into the sewer. And remember, now he's Smart Slash, is what I call him, right? Sentient Slash.
He's Smash.
Smash? Is that what he is? Yeah. He sneaks into the turtles' lair to tell them that they need to meet with Hob. Before they do, the Turtle and Splinters need to discuss needing to go after Shredder before the Technodrome. So that's kind of where we left Splinter and Leo, and the Rat King shows up, and they're back and forth about should we go after Shredder first, should we go after Technodrome. Splinter and Leo say, we need to deal with Shredder first.
Well, the Rat King didn't show up so much as they remembered something, and then they just showed the Rat King to be like, well, this is what he was talking about.
Yes, exactly. And sorry, I was just picking up, like, trying to recap where we left them, so to say.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I
totally makes sense.
I completely was thinking of something
just
else.
trying to recap. And so Donnie obviously does not agree. And they're split. Mikey's really unsure too. So Donnie storms off, insisting that they need to take on the Technodrome. There will be no world to deal with if they wait. So Leo tries to convince Donnie, and that's while Raphael and Mikey go to see Hob. There was a quick fight scene with Nobody and Kirby Fan, also Harold and Angel, a.k.a., and they're just continuing on their data collection, and they end with a weird occurrence where they might have been seen on camera. They seem to have gotten help, but it seemed to be too quick, and they couldn't tell. We jump to a quick cutscene with April's sees her parents for the first time, and Casey for the first time in New York City, and tells Casey she's got his back, but she doesn't have any more ooze to save him, and that he needs to, she's basically trying to convince him to stop fighting.
Yeah.
Stop being who he is.
It was like a romantic scene.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Yeah.
It was like, oh.
Yeah, she had to hit him to, like, wake him up, but also say, don't keep fighting.
Yeah, she was like, let me abuse my abused boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like, that won't be traumatic at all.
Nothing. So at the meetup with Hob, we get something really interesting, really left field. Basically, Hob is just all against humans, all out, all against humans. And with the help of our scientist, Lindsay, who now seems to be a, like, complicit captive, so to say, is helping. We have the appearance of Herman, the hermit crab, and Mondo Gecko. Yeah. And so the humans, they got to go, as Paul Rudd would say. Yeah.
Yeah, but Lindsay went from, like, she wouldn't have been arrested because she was a hostage to now she's a straight up accomplice.
That's right. That's it. Yeah. Right.
She would be arrested as hell.
Exactly. They convince Splinter and the Turtles that they are the real deal, and that basically there was a little bit of a fight and whatnot, but they need to join forces. And then they ask where Pete is. Pete the Pigeon. And Pete is out being his bumbling idiot self, recruiting and telling everyone the plan. And it's revealed that he is telling Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah.
Nolan, what are we thinking about issue 38?
I didn't like April slapping Casey. I hate that trend. It's like, yeah, because I feel like it happens a lot.
I think it's like a movie trope too, right? Like, wake up and listen to me. I have to hit you to do that.
Yeah, like, who does that in real life? You would be, like, arrested. It was like, it makes no sense. I hated that bit, but the rest of that scene was nice.
Sure.
I like Hob. I like what they're doing with Hob. I think he's much more interesting now than he was as an adversary to our character, to the Turtles and
For
Splinter.
sure.
Now there's more. He feels almost like Blade Runner-esque in terms of how, except for with them, it's obviously replicants versus humans. But I thought this was a good issue. I thought the cliffhanger at the end was very fun. I think Pete is goofy, and I love him.
It's ridiculous. I think Hobbs is this really, really interesting foil in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
That goes back and forth, that plays both sides in and out. You can't quite pin down where his motives are exactly.
It's kind of like Loki.
A little bit, yeah.
Not like
hero,
TV
anti-hero, like back and forth.
Not TV show Loki, but
Sure.
Loki.
Yeah, Loki. So in issue 39, we pick up with Bebop and Rocksteady deciding to ambush the Turtles without telling Karai. And Donatello, after storming off, goes to see Harold at the lab. Harold's been working on Metalhead and the Nobody suit, and has been distracted from working on the portal to Burn Now. And this is the first time we see Donatello like kind of flip out because he thinks that like nobody sees this as a threat except him. And he just thinks everyone around him is crazy, and then they work it out and he just apologizes.
Yeah.
Apparently he has been working on the portal a little bit, but just not as much.
Yeah.
Angel, while leaving the lab, runs into Alopex, and Alopex has found out that the Turtles will be ambushed and they're going to need help. At this meetup that the Turtles show up with Hob, they show up without Donnie, which Hob points out.
Just real quick, I don't know if maybe you haven't mentioned for later, when Alopex arrives, it's also revealed that she was the one that
Yes.
they sort of saw but didn't know for sure.
Yes.
That was
if she had help or if there was a camera or something like that. Yes. Yeah. But that she wants they also mentioned that Angel thought that she was in Northampton still. She stayed there. But she came back.
Yeah.
And wants to help. So they go to this meetup with Hob without Donnie. Hob points it out, and Pete just brings Bebop and Rocksteady to the meeting. This is a really interesting moment, though, because you would have thought just the all-out brawl would happen, but they're about to attack, and Hob tries to reason with them to get them to join the mutant army that he's trying to build, until he hears them say that they are half human.
Yeah.
And all bets are off at that point, and he attacks them.
It was sort of like Thanos, Star-Lord to Thanos, and
it sort of reminded me of a little bit of like Voldemort and Harry Potter. There's like no mudbloods here kind of thing. Like, is what it reminded me of.
I mean, in terms of just immediate reaction, or even like the scene in Guardians Volume 2 when Ego reveals that he killed Peter's mom.
Oh, right.
And Peter just immediately shoots him, like, no hesitation. That was sort of that moment.
Yeah. So we are, so they start attacking. Alopex and Nobody are watching and are about to jump in. April and Harold see this all unfolding on camera through the Nobody suit, and assumes that Donnie will leave to help. And Donnie says no, he has more important things to do.
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, not what we expected at all. I'm going to hop into issue 40, if that makes sense. I think that was a bit of a shorter issue. Anything to add there before I do?
I don't think so. I think there's some fun character stuff with like Mondo Gecko and the crab that I forget the name of. Herman. There was some fun stuff in there. But I think there's even more stuff.
I think that was the thing with Herman. I was like, okay, Mondo Gecko I can like kind of get behind, but Herman, I was like, what's his deal? Like, how is he gonna what's he gonna do? Like pinch you to death? Like if he gets you in his claws? You know, like I didn't get it. But it's revealed in the next issue in particular. What his sort of superpower is, in a way.
I guess also, maybe you mentioned it and I completely blanked, but Leo shows up a little late and Mondo, Gecko, and Herman sort of just immediately go into attack mode. And that's where you sort of see their capabilities
Yes.
for the first time.
I think that was I just put that as a line as like convincing Splinter, basically, that they're worthwhile to align with. And Herman has some interesting abilities. So, issue 40, we have our Royal Rumble, right? Starts out, I think one of the most important points is when Slash gets injured saving Mikey from a flying car. There's
that was a great moment.
Yeah, that was awesome to see. There was a quick short scene with Casey and Mr. O'Neill fixing things around the shop. Mr. O'Neill being worried about April and the trouble Casey could bring. Casey announces that he would die for her. And they talk about Casey joining the store to kind of help out for a little bit of security, a little bit of handyman stuff. I think it's the most positive male role model that Casey has seen and a fatherly figure. So I thought that was interesting to see.
Human anyway.
Human, yeah. Cut back to the big battle. Splinter realizes that direct attacks aren't working on Bebop and Rocksteady. They keep getting thrown off of them, frankly. Alapex does show up and scratches Rocksteady's face. He throws her and Raph into the pigeon coop. And we have one of the most awkward scenes that I've ever seen in a comic book. In the pigeon coop, they seem to be trapped there. And then Pete shows up and gets them out. Who would have thought?
He was just saying, like he was hiding out with his friends.
Yeah, hiding out with his friends. And then you showed up. Splinter then saves Hobbs and attacks Bebop and Rocksteady solo, moving them into position to attack from above with an electrical wire by Mondo Gecko. It looks like they're down, but they seem to get up. And then Herman...
They get knocked down and they get back again.
Get backed up again?
Yeah, they get back up again.
And then they get knocked down?
Yeah.
And they...
Get up again.
Okay, yeah. And so Herman fires on them. So this is when I was going to bring up like what Herman can actually do. So Herman's shell has been replaced by like what looks like an upside down like dumpster on his back, but that houses a ton of missiles and ammunitions and everything like that. He fires on them. It looks like he missed, but apparently Herman never misses. And he actually takes down a whole building on top of Bebop and Rocksteady. And so they have the moment that they feel like they've won the battle and everything. And Hobb then invites Alapex to join them. Alapex says, no, I'm going to be on my own. And this is where we hear the first reference to the mighty Mutanimals for the first time. So as this is happening... as they leave, Bebop and Rocksteady survive and agree not to tell Karai about their failure. And this is the biggest twist, I think, of the whole volume, frankly. It's revealed that Donnie is sending Metalhead to meet with the Foot and tells them that the world depends on the Foot to stop Krang. All right, so next up is the TMNT Ghostbusters miniseries. But, Nolan, what'd you think of issue 40?
I thought this issue was great. I feel like it was getting me back into the volume when it was kind of struggling. The last few did, but I love certain things. Like I loved the moment where Hobb sees Slash get hurt.
Right.
That felt like I really like Hobb and Slash's relationship.
Yes.
A lot. And I thought the stuff with Casey and April's dad was pretty nice. I mean, that stuff is nice. It's good. It's important character stuff for Casey and April's parents, but it does sort of feel like sometimes it slows down the momentum.
What I like about that, though, is it shows him an opportunity for a different life, even if he doesn't choose it.
Yeah.
That he does at least have it's a considered choice to keep doing what he's doing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting. Am I reading into it, or does it sort of feel like they're setting up, like definitively setting up a romance between Raph and Alopex?
Yeah, so that was the weirdest moment I've ever seen, right? Because so the weird moment that we're talking about, there's a couple of cells, frames, so to say, where they are seemingly trapped in the pigeon coop, Pete's pigeon coop. We find out under the wire, and they can't quite get themselves out, and they look as though they're like having pillow talk. In the pigeon coop,
Yeah.
and they make amends. They do apologize for each other, for what happened in Northampton. Raph not trusting her, Alopex saying, "I didn't give you much reason not, to trust me," and they kind of make amends very quickly. I did think that was a little fast to kind of water under the bridge. But okay, we move on with our lives because we got people, butt to kick, so to say.
I feel like I like the direction they're going with Alopex, but I feel like a lot of her story right now is happening so fast, and it feels a little unrealistic. Like,
Sure.
she stopped being on Shredder's side and then was immediately on the turtle side.
Immediate, yeah.
And then they immediately make amends. I actually think I'm kind of here for a romance between the two. I think it would be kind of interesting, but it does feel a little rushed with Alopex.
I think that's just kind of it. It just it happens at a fast clip, but she's a really interesting character in a lot of ways that there feels like there's a lot more there, to explore. I do happen to have this feeling that from the collecting experience, so to say, that she has a decent sized role in the Armageddon game and like that. So I think she's going to be explored a bit more in the future. But yes,
yeah, and I feel like it's something I have to get used to because I'm transitioning more from reading monthly to reading collected,
right?
In general. But you have to sort of remember that it feels rushed now. But if you're reading it monthly, it's a 4 to 12 month process. Like, the process is a lot longer, and you kind of just have to. It's an adjustment period for me, I've noticed.
Definitely something like that. I think about that as well from time to time when I feel like an issue sort of feels a little rushed. I'm like, well, they're probably trying to cover enough ground, in what's everyone up to and doing. And so these cut and jump scenes, so to say, jump cuts rather, between scenes is to make sure they're filling out the story month to month, these different buckets, so to say. What you think about that twist at the end?
At first, when I read it, I was a little annoyed. I was like, oh, okay, they're doing this. I feel like comics do that fairly often.
Sure.
But I was interested to see where it goes, and I end up liking where it goes. But unfortunately, right after this, we get slapped across the face with the miniseries.
With the miniseries. Yeah. I thought it was an interesting role for Metalhead in particular.
Yeah, I will
say that.
Yeah, I like that element.
I thought that was very interesting.
Clever on Donnie's part. Not that he needs to prove that he's clever.
Sure, exactly. But also, you're just believing more and more and more that he really is flying solo here. That's it. So... yeah. Here we are at another miniseries. So we've gone 4, and now another 4. If you're a fan of the Ghostbusters, this is for you.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, right? It's got similar comedy. It's got the proton packs. It's got everything you would need as a Ghostbusters fan.
By the way, there was 3 issues of the main series between Turtles in Time and Ghostbusters.
Okay. I mean, counting's hard sometimes, but
it's fine. I just thought I think
it would be a lot neater if it was 4, 4, and 4. I'm gonna say.
The main reason I bring that up is because it was just it's very annoying that you have the 4 not super interesting to me personally issues. Then you get 3, it gets you back in.
Yes.
Only 3, and then another 4 that I wasn't very interested in.
Yes, I could agree. So. So how did the Turtles meet the Ghostbusters? Basically, it opens up in what seems to be very old Japan, And Kitsune brings Krang to meet her brother, Chi-Yu.
Wasn't it more that Chiyu, is that his name?
Yeah.
Well, he was arguing with Kitsune, and he wasn't supposed to be there at the same time as Krang, so Krang kind of got annoyed because of that.
Right. Something like that.
yeah.
Means ends. The ends being that Krang throws him into the dimensional portal and traps him some faraway thing. Back at the lab, Donnie has brought all of the brothers to the lab and Casey, and I believe April as well, to test the portal. It works on an initial test, but as they step into the portal, Harold just has to hit a fly that lands on the machine, and it switches them into a different New York City, which we then cut to the Ghostbusters doing what they do, busting ghosts. So we do see Peter, Ray, Egan, and Winston fighting ghosts. And they sense that maybe there's been an interdimensional break. They get a call that their machine has possibly picked it up. And the turtles have stepped through the portal and ended up in the church. So their initial idea was to just go from the lab into the living room in the sewer and back. They land in the church, but immediately realize they're wedding crashers, which is hilarious. Never leave a crasher behind. But they're in this different world during a wedding. Out of nowhere, a spirit begins to appear, and it's Shi-Yu. I think it's Shang-Chi, Shi-Yu.
Maybe? I don't know.
Apologies if we got that wrong, by all means.
If we did get it wrong, make sure to tell Craig and Shane.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, light us up in the comments, and that'll help the engagement and get us greater reach. So that'd be great. In any event, the turtles begin to attack, but realize they can't fight him because, he's a ghost. He's a spirit being. And Shi-Yu is stronger, and he, out of nowhere, seems to zap Casey and get control of his body. And that is when the Ghostbusters arrive to do their work. I'm going to let's just run through all four of these real quick.
Yeah,
let's just go through it, right? So the Ghostbusters do their zapping thing. They get a hold of, they hit Shi-Yu. He runs away with what are called thralls. So he's made a bunch of minions, as I've called them, but they're called thralls. And he gets away. They go back. The Ghostbusters and the turtles go back to the lab. And it was interesting to me that each one of the turtles finds a Ghostbuster that they most align with. I thought that was kind of an interesting point.
Yeah.
And they get a call that Shi-Yu is probably turned up at Madison Square Garden. And it appears that Casey is playing in a hockey game against Casey, and they both hit each other. I thought that was kind of interesting moment that they put in there. The team gets that call just as the Turtles find out that they have approximately 72 hours until they are stuck in this New York City forever. They convince the Ghostbusters that they can help. So if you ever wanted to see Donatello in a proton pack, you should read this 4-issue miniseries. Issue 3, the Turtles and the Ghostbusters race to Madison Square Garden to save Casey and confront Shi-Yu again. And they were able to herd Shi-Yu towards a proton stream. Casey fought through the mind control to tell them that they needed to defeat the thralls before Shi-Yu. But then, and they figure out to do that, they need to create a low voltage hit, so to say, to the thralls that could interrupt the connection between Shi-Yu and the body he's controlling. In their next fight with Shi-Yu in Chinatown, they're just, traipsing around New York City, fighting everywhere they could, they would like. Raphael, impulse control, still hasn't learned, goes after Shi-Yu instead of the thralls, doesn't work. But Mikey does land the first pulse and save somebody by hitting them with the low voltage pulse. Raphael tries getting to Casey and getting him to fight the mind control, but he doesn't really seem to be able to. And just as the Ghostbusters land a cannon strike on Shiyu, Raph is able to get a chest strike with the glove on Casey to end up saving him. Back at the lab, Leo promises to help with Shiyu as long as they can, like while they're there, so to say. And they decide to build that classic EMP to take out the Thralls all at once. And in issue 4, we have one more showdown with Shiyu and the Thralls. They storm the front door. They end up threatening people, all that good stuff. They end up defeating them through using the EMP and then trapping Shiyu in one of their Ghostbuster traps.
Yep.
So this is where things really do connect with the main series is they are able to get the Turtles back through their portal to Splinter. And then you cut back to the Ghostbusters and they decide to toss their trap through a portal to another universe. And the narration of the story says that Shiyu, even though trapped, is an immortal being, so he has patience, but he can sense his family is near. So it's very ominous. You're probably going to hear from Shiyu again at some point.
Yeah.
So, fun 4 issues. Certainly not like attached to the main series in very, very few ways.
I don't know. Like, I guess they were fun. I think if I had cared about Ghostbusters at all, it would have been fun. But I don't. I mean, I've seen some of them, maybe the first 2. I don't remember. Sure. I know I've seen at least the first. But it's fine. But as it stood, and maybe if I read the Ghostbusters comic that was going on, maybe
because they did reference that, right?
Yeah,
I think
it's the same world. But as it stood, I mean, is his name Winston?
Winston, yeah.
Yeah, he was the only one I kind of cared about in terms of them.
I couldn't keep him straight.
Yeah,
honestly, I couldn't keep the name straight.
And Winston, he connected with Leonardo, so maybe that's why I cared, because Leonardo is my favorite. But I felt like they had to stretch to make the Turtles like each have one, because you had. I feel like they had Bill Murray's character. I don't remember the character's name.
Right.
Was it Ray?
I think it's Ray. Yeah.
He connects more with Raphael.
Yes.
And Michelangelo just doesn't really have any of them to connect to, because Egon and the other one.
The other one.
Yeah. They connected more with Donatello because they're just kind of smart people. So and the whole like possession thing, I just didn't care about. There felt like, why it sort of felt like, why is Casey and April even there? Because they haven't even been on this adventure with them. So it just
so Casey is the one who hits the EMP, right? Saves them in some ways. So there's like that convenience. I will say I liked that they were able to inject the comedy style of Ghostbusters into this world in some ways that I thought were fun. And then one line in particular was hilarious to me. It was just like, you guys should stick around. We can make a fortune merchandising the 4 of you. You know, like I thought that was fun. Yeah. If there is one thing for this universe as a whole, it was interesting that they saw a different New York, because they had seen the Turtles through time in the same world, it seemed. And now they get to see an alternate universe, New York. And I think that is like basically like the most important thing that they learned from this, because back in there, they mentioned that like Donatello says something about like back in there, he can't level with the idea that he saw a ghost. Yeah. And that was an interesting foil, I thought, back and forth kind of thing. But he levels that like we're gonna go back to my universe where like reincarnation is the craziest thing to deal with, or something like that.
I just felt like, first off, it was another thing where, I mean, it was slightly different, but it was another thing where the turtles go to somewhere on accident and then come back like at another like time or dimension. It just felt like repetitive, and then the whole like, we only have 72 hours. It's like, what? Why? It's like,
the particles are diminishing. Yeah.
Stop. They need to get home. You don't need to cut it to 72 hours. It just felt like a dumb
Just get them
trope.
home. Yeah. Just get them home.
And I don't know. And it was just a slog for me to read. They weren't bad. I'm sure if I liked the Ghostbusters,
I think that's what I was meant. That's how I kind of started this. If you're a fan of the Ghostbusters, this is for you.
Yeah.
It's got the witty comedy that you would like from the Ghostbusters. It's got the proton backs. It's got the in-world references, right? Like the stages of the demons and stuff like that. The like happy vibe, the good vibes goo and all of that, right? So there's that. Just not for us at the moment.
Yeah. Plus, like, I don't know. It's not bad. I guess the big thing, another thing for me is that it didn't feel like the events quite lined up correctly with the main series. Like, to end where it did, it felt kind of random that they would test out the machine, because when you go back, it feels like that didn't even happen. It's referenced, but there just feels like a disconnect.
Yes. And that it went from like Metalhead at Shredder to testing the machine, right?
Yeah. And just if the Turtles are more focused on Shredder, or at least they're saying, and same with Master Splinter, and Casey and April are doing their own thing, why did they all come together for this?
I think we get our answer for that, because I felt the same thing, and as you were explaining it, I was like, wait a second, maybe we actually get our answer towards the end of this series.
Okay, so I mean, maybe, because for me, there was reference to this, but it just felt very odd, and not like there was a disconnect.
I think it is odd, but I think this whole volume leads up to something really big. We'll talk about.
I think I know what you're referencing, but even still, I felt like there was a disconnect.
It's tough. Yeah. So let's get into our main story.
The good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I let Nolan rant for a little bit, but we I think we'll all be happier if we move to issue 41. I'm going to do issue 41 and 42 back to back.
My rants are famous with the people who know me, so I think people will be very happy to hear me rant.
Nolan, it is why I thought you'd be fantastic at this. So, Cowabunga, dude. 41 and 42. We're going to do these two at a time. I think that would work well. So this 4-issue arc is Attack on the Technodrome. So this is part 1. We all of a sudden the Technodrome is almost fully operational. We went from years to months to weeks to days. And the thing about the Technodrome for me, when I was a kid, I played with a Technodrome all the time. I love that toy. When I come across them now and they're like complete, I mean, they're upwards of like $400 or $500 if you can get a complete inbox one now. And I think I had like one of the variant colors or something, if I remember correctly. I think there's like 2, possibly. I could be wrong. But I played with that so much, and that Technodrome was iconic in the cartoon series, right? As well as like the sort of the advanced vehicle, so to say, like the drill kind of thing. So I love any depiction of the Technodrome personally, and I thought it was great in this arc. So fully operational. We cut to Donnie through Metalhead. I almost said Meathead. Metalhead is negotiating with Shredder to team up. The deal is that Shredder is going to supply his army. Donatello is going to supply a way in and the Fugitoid directly into the Technodrome or to Burnow Island, more specifically, undetected. Back at the lab, Harold wants to test the transporter. Cut to Hobbs and Splinter overseeing the mutanimals training. Both the Turtles, Herman, Monogecko, Slash. And it seems they're ready to launch their offensive against Shredder. Casey and April have an idea to speak to Dr. Miller from the Secret History of the Foot Clan about the Foot Clan.
Obviously, the best of the miniseries.
The best.
Yeah, that Chris is in love
The
with.
best. Yeah.
That guy that you forgot about, but then you remembered when you saw him.
Yeah, that guy. He's the archaeologist, though. That was the Ashi no Himitsu, I think, is the artifact for the foot, the kind of sacred book. Back with the portal test with Donnie, it works out. He brings back a gift to Harold from Paris, apparently. And then he lets Shredder know that it's time to advance. Shredder is weary of Donatello, so is Karai, but it sees it as the best path for all involved. He thought it was a shrewd tactic for him, and he doesn't see it as, breaking his allegiance to Shredder or to Hamato Yoshi and Splinter and his family. He just sees it as like a mutually assured kind of thing that they need to do.
Yep.
And then at the end of this, Fugitoid and Stockman strike a deal where Fugitoid seems to kind of share the details of everything. So we get into 42, which is Attack of the Drone Part 2. And they're gearing up to attack Shredder, and the Turtles announce they are not going. But it seems Splinter is. Leo has a plan, but they don't say what it is where they kind of leave you on this. So we cut to Burn Now Island. Fugitoid and Stockman tell Krang that Shredder and the Foot are going to attack the island. Krang almost kills the Fugitoid, but Stockman reasons with him that we need him. Stockman then tries to get his own safety secured by offering the full story that the Turtles and the teleport and all of that is about to happen. Cut back to the Turtles in the lab. Donnie needs to stay announces that he needs to stay behind because Harold is working remote via Metalhead. So apparently remote work is a thing, even without a pandemic in this world. Harold's in quote unquote inside Metalhead. And Donnie needs to stay behind to man the lab. Just as the Turtles go through the portal to Burn Now Island, Shredder and the Foot arrive at the portal, and it's announced that per their agreement, Bebop and Rocksteady are going to stay behind with Donnie should anything happen or go awry. Everyone arrives on Burn Now.
Go
awry. Wow. Go awry. Karai. Okay. So the Foot and Shredder make it to Burn Now. We have a quick cutscene with April confronting Miller, and he agrees to help, surprisingly, to April. At the same time, we have Hobbs and the crew about to attack the Foot headquarters and where they think Shredder is. This is where we get a flashback. And we have a flashback scene of Leo explaining this plan while current events are happening. So I'm going to explain the plan, but it's also showing, again, what is happening. So Leo explains that his entire plan was coordinated. Donnie going to Shredder was planned. Getting Shredder to go to Krang with them, and Krang knowing what was coming, that it wasn't a surprise. Very interesting, humbling moment. As someone who's coached in the past and things like that, it's always awesome to see a leader have a moment like this where Splinter shows his humility and apologizes for his obsession over the vendetta with Shredder, and commends Leo and the Turtles for such a great plan and coming together. Leo shares that him and Donnie figured this out together and have been enacting this plan the whole time. And we end with Shredder facing off with Krang very shortly after arriving on the island. So that's our issue 41 and 42. To your point about it felt weird timing, that if the Turtles were with Splinter and going after Shredder, why did they show up to test the portal? Because it was a part of the plan. That's my take.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that element, but I just think it just feels like the timing for things didn't quite line up.
Sure.
But it's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
It could
technically,
be.
in this scenario, it is the end of the world. But
it could be the end of the world. Yeah. So what do you think about those two issues?
I thought they were great, and it was so nice after the Ghostbusters to get these, because I was I was not feeling it. And then these were like, they gave me life again, which is ironic for something that happens.
That is a bit ironic.
But
yes.
It was very interesting. It did again feel kind of like 0 to 100 with the Technodrome, but
Yes.
again, you kind of it's a monthly thing as opposed to how we're reading it.
Sure.
But I really liked it. I thought the plan was interesting. It really paid off and made me like everything that.
So here's the question for you: were you hook, line, and sinker on Donnie being on his own? And acting alone, so to say.
I guess I didn't feel passionately that he was, but I didn't think this is what was happening. I didn't think there was a plan in place that I did.
I was a little shocked when he said he had more important things to do.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite as shocked, but still surprised that he sent Metalhead to Shredder.
Yeah.
I thought he was acting alone, which was traumatizing, slightly to see. But I knew that they would reconcile somehow. I was a little bit frustrated overall that by this point they haven't figured out how to just stick together. Like, through everything they've been through, they have not seen the pattern that when they are divided, they fall, so to say, right? And they have to keep on having these like stark reminders that when they're together, they can do anything.
Yeah.
Right. But that was that was my internal monologue.
I think it's a little weird. The portal is in Howard's lab, right?
Correct.
So it just felt like he was willing to give up where his lab is to Shredder.
I mean, and Shredder walks in and says, "This is where you've been hiding this whole time," right?
He's screwed now. Like, what does he do? And I thought it was a little foolish for Howard to be showing his face on the screen.
That too. Yes.
I understand why all that happened, but
yeah,
I just think that didn't quite line up. I'm kind of getting sick of Baxter Stockman. like it's just kind of like, I'm sure we'll get some cool stuff with him, but right now it just feels like he's just there in the way. He's there to be a little annoying and team up with whoever.
For sure. I'm going to land 43. We're going to talk about that one, and then we're going to leave 44 on its own. I'm not going to do these two back to back like I just did.
That's fair.
So 43, Attack of the Technodrome, Part 3. The turtles land, and they don't see the Fugitoid anywhere. We cut to Krang actually besting Shredder. And this becomes a trope, and they make fun of him through the next two issues. The conversing while fighting thing, like they aren't out of breath or something, is something else. But like, why do we have to share everything with just our enemy? So my point being is Krang bests Shredder and then tells Shredder that he was betrayed. Like, I don't know, but okay. We need that for the story. It's okay. So we cut to Fugitoid and the Baxter Stockman are trapped in holding. Stockman tells him that he has malware in the Technodrome to take it over, but only after a minute of the Technodrome terraforming. And this could kill thousands, so the Fugitoid turns into Chet Allen to try to escape. As the guards enter, Stockman releases his Mausers inside the prison.
Was it Mausers or was it the...
So they start with Mausers. I checked that.
Yeah,
I was surprised about
remember.
this. Yeah. So they start with Mausers. We cut to Karai and Hun debating what they should be doing, just as Hobbs and the Mutanimals break in along with Splinter. Slash immediately takes out Hun and really like shoves it to him, frankly, that he was beating up on his own son. Splinter saves Mondo Gecko and faces off from Karai on his own. And during the fighting, Hobbs slips away to steal the ooze that Shredder has so he can build out more of his Mutanimals army. And it's at this point that he rounds up the Mutanimals to leave, and Slash does not want to leave Splinter behind, but Hobbs says they should, citing the fact that the Turtles changed the plans on them without sharing exactly what the plans, but basically they were supposed to have attacked with 3 of the turtles. They said they weren't be going with him. Only Splinter would. So Hobbs, to him, thinks they should leave him behind. We cut to Leo, Raph, and Mikey invading the Technodrome, and that's when they run into Stockman. They see Fugitoid behind him, but Stockman has his Flyborgs, he calls them, which are a mix between flies and Mausers combined. Just as Krang is about to finish the Shredder, he's told of Stockman's escape. And as Stockman is about to initiate the 1-minute terraform, which would kick off the malware to take over, Krang arrives. And it's at that point that Krang reroutes the systems around the malware, and then initiates the terraforming. Shredder is about to lose and radios to Bebop and Rocksteady to kill Donatello. One note before you hop in. I know your point about being annoyed with Stockman. Are you as annoyed at Stockman as you are on a hot summer day with a fly buzzing around you? Because I think it's actually the same level of annoyance, and it's a perfect analogy for who he is. He's like this absolute pest in the story, pest. I don't know, insect. He just doesn't go away. He just survives. He just figures it out, and you can never really. He's only about his survival, right?
Yeah.
And so the fly is a very interesting choice for him, I think, and very fitting. But your thoughts on 43 before we get into the doozy of 44?
I thought it was a good issue. I mean, it was as good as the other ones. It was a good continuation. I see what you mean about. I kind of had the same thought of you've been betrayed, but then you don't know how you've been betrayed. You need to chill out. You don't need to kill Donatello. I mean, you were betrayed,
sure,
but the way you were betrayed was not the same way that you thought.
Right,
that Krang was talking about.
Right.
And
why do we have to talk while we're fighting?
Yeah.
Evil henchmen. Yeah.
I mean, it was good. I feel like the ending. I mean, we'll get into it more with issue 44. Is that it?
Yeah.
I will say, but we'll get more into it. They definitely at the end of this issue made it seem like Donatello was ripped in half.
At the end of this one,
I think so. Because to me, did he
not at the end of 43? No.
Did he? I thought he died at the end, and then you go into the next issue.
No, it wasn't at the end of this one.
Oh, because the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Donatello doesn't die. I was just kidding.
And not in 43. But I will say what's interesting about him radioing to Bebop and Rocksteady is that he radios to the most incompetent mutants in his whole Foot clan.
Yeah.
Right? We've seen nothing but absolute bumbling idiots that can't get anything effective done. Right? And so seeing that radio call go out, to me, was just like, okay, how are we going to get out of this? Right? And so in issue 44, the Turtles are looking to save the Fugitoid so he can help stop the terraforming that's happened. Again, this is Technodrome, attacking the Technodrome part 4. Stockman gets away, crashes through a window with a Flyborg flying him away. They save the Fugitoid. They need to distract Krang so that the Fugitoid can help power down the Technodrome. Back in the lab, Donnie starts to fight with Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah, you're right.
Harold tells him to run through Metalhead, and even had Metalhead jumping in front of him to try to slow them down. And it's at this point we see a hand having falling on the floor. That is a turtle hand falling on the floor. And so I'm going to pause right there for a second. Quick 2-second reaction. When you saw that cell, what did you think happened?
I thought he was ripped in half.
So at that cell, when you see, I thought he was cracked in half, if that makes sense. And because I think Rocksteady says something like, I didn't know that's what they would look like on the inside or something like that.
That's why I thought, because they weren't showing anything. So, and it was very vague.
But
so
it was just like one limp hand is what you're seeing with a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So what did you think happened, though? Like, he was ripped in half and he was done.
Yeah, well, I knew he died.
Right.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
I knew that I had that spoiled. So I knew he was dead, but like I said, when he said the crack thing, that's what they looked inside, I thought the way it was framed that he was split in half, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, wow, they went like all out.
I still didn't believe that Bebop and Rocksteady were actually capable of doing anything successfully.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
So I just thought he was like very, very, very badly injured.
Yeah.
I still thought they were bumbling idiots and they wouldn't be able to accomplish anything.
Which, I mean,
because it was a reasonably difficult fight, but not what you expected. I knew Donatello died at one point. I did not know we were arriving at that issue at this point.
I assumed,
and I did look it up, and it is one of the keys. You know,
I did. I assumed it would be like issue 50 or something,
somewhere around there. Yeah.
So I thought it was coming soon. I didn't think it would happen here.
So it looks like he dies. We'll just leave it at that point for the sake of the storytelling. Bebop and Rocksteady are then called back to the Foot Headquarters to help with the attack with Karai. Back on Burn now, the Turtles are taking out Krang. A lot easier than last time, might I add. And holding him back. At the Foot Headquarters, nobody in Alapex show up to cover for Splinter because Hobbs had left them behind. Raphael actually asked them to look after him. So I thought it was super interesting. Thinking ahead there from Raphael. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Splinter tries to reason with Karai. So very similar to Hobbs reasoning with Bebop and Rocksteady. Tries to reason with Karai that he is behind the ways of the Foot. He wants to bring the Foot back to the old ways, just as Karai does, but that cannot happen with Shredder leading. Karai seems to get overwhelmed by this or something, and it always reminds me of that one line. I think it is in the second Turtle movie where he goes, "Ninja, vanish," and he like hits, he throws a smoke bomb kind of thing, and they all disappear. So that's how Karai leaves.
So yeah, I got the impression that she was sort of like agreeing, like he was winning her over.
Right, just a bit, yeah, or at least conflicted at the very least.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that Harold calls nobody back to the lab immediately.
Yeah.
But they don't use call signs.
Yeah.
And so that's been a huge thing. He breaks the call signs.
That's how she knew shit was real.
It was real. And so back on Burn Now, the Terraform has seemingly killed all of the soldiers on the island. But just before Shredder dies, a Flyborg picks him up and lands him on a boat with Stockman. Shredder says something like, "Who are you?" or something like that. And he says, "Well, if we live, your new partner," or something like that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting moment. Again, like a fly, never dies. Just keeps on persisting. The Fugitoid ends the Technodrome, quickly sends the Turtles back to the lab. And the Fugitoid explains that Burn Now Island can now be a refuge for Utroms. I thought that was a very interesting moment. But Krang needs to answer for crimes that he's done. And so he brings him back to Neutrino, which I thought was a triumphant moment for Honeycutt, Chet, Fugitoid, whatever you want to call him, to make it back to Neutrino, but bringing Krang back for justice there.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. And that was a surprise twist for me. I really didn't expect that at all.
I didn't expect it either.
And the Turtles race back into the lab, triumphant, only to find out that Donnie is indeed dead. And we get an iconic full page of Splinter holding Donatello.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Literally says to be continued, actually. It doesn't come with the music. That's just me. It has been very interesting talking to you about this volume because I think it's become pretty clear over 5 volumes now what types of issues we enjoy more than what we don't.
Yeah.
That we are, when this series really sings when the action is afoot.
Yeah.
When it's moving, it's got that bit more fast pace. I've said in the past, I'll say it probably every episode. It feels cinematic in its way, that it moves that quickly in the pacing. I read through this volume the fastest of all of them.
Really?
I did. And I wouldn't say because of how short it is or something like that. It just seemed like a quicker read for me than the others. But that's not because like I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know what I mean? It just felt like easier reading for me. But yeah, it seems like we both like the faster paced issues, the bigger battles, or the lead ups to those.
Well, I don't even know if that fully aligns because Volume 4 was my favorite volume, and that was a lot of just like character work.
Sure.
But I just felt like all of that felt to be more on track with the story. It felt like, even though it wasn't super action heavy, though there was some great action.
Yes.
It felt like very important character beats and felt like a setup for the big thing. And this volume just felt like we did get the payoff, but way later than
we had the
we
side quest too.
Because it just felt like we had that whole volume that was great lead up, and then we got extra lead up that we didn't need in this volume.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I absolutely do think the IDW collections are the best way to read this.
Absolutely.
But they do have their downsides because I think if you read 4 and then just read the issues, I would have enjoyed so much more of what was going on.
It's interesting you say that. As you were saying this, if I was reading monthly, and I said, I don't really need to. Do I need to read this for the Ghostbusters? Do I really need to read Turtles in Time? Right? If I had both issues next to me, I could just continue, monthly, just with the main series kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, Shiyu might show up somewhere else, and that kind of thing in the future. But like literally, that's all I could seem to pull from these 8 miniseries.
Yeah, there's
here.
I know there's a Ghostbusters 2. There's like another one. So I imagine he comes back then, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we see him. Like if he's just contained to that, and then.
But now we have 3 interdimensional beings, though, right? Because we have the Rat King, that is Kitsune's brother, I think. Then we have Shiyu, and
so they're all
Kitsune.
Siblings.
Yeah. So we have these like they're setting that up.
Maybe he'll come back in Armageddon game. I don't know anything about that really
yet.
But I don't know. It just felt kind of. I don't know. This volume was very frustrating to me. It was. The issues of the main series were great.
Fantastic,
like,
right?
Top tier of the issues that we've gotten so far. But the pacing was just destroyed by some very mid miniseries.
I'm too old to use that terminology. I'd be really uncomfortable saying that. But
you agree.
But I can agree. But I'll be honest, it was exactly the way I felt about Secret History of the Foot. They took you out of it. It stopped you. It slowed you down.
That for me,
but that had more connections.
Yeah. I mean, that's
agree.
Very important because that introduced Kitsune.
You're right,
and the random guy that disappears. Until he comes back into play for some reason.
Dr. Miller. Yes,
but it has me concerned because next volume, I think it's like 45 through 50 is the only main issues.
Oh,
and the rest is like an April miniseries and then an April Casey miniseries and then something else. And it's just like, please. I just want to see the follow up to Donnie and all that. I don't care about the miniseries.
Yeah.
So I hope
that is for sure.
I hope in volume 6 it jumps into a continuation of the main story before it goes into the miniseries.
Or at the very least, the miniseries are connected.
Yes.
At the very least.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave you with that. We don't know what's going to happen. We haven't really read ahead yet. I haven't really even cracked the volume 6 yet. So we will see you in 2 weeks
Yeah.
and release time and all that good stuff.
Rest in peace, Donnie.
R.I.P.
F's in the chat for him, everyone.
Wow. Well, I think we close it out with a Cowabunga. The Cowabunga Chronicles is sponsored by StockGen Laboratories, hosted by Kirsten Nolan, and produced by the Arcade Comic. If you are interested in the TMNT IDW collection or pulling the new Jason Aaron TMNT series that releases July 10th, both are 20% off and include free bags and boards. Be sure to pull the series before final order cutoff only at the Arcade Comics on East State Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana.